BeanShooter, welcome to Locked In, man. Dude.
Thank you, Ian. My guy.
This all possible because of Johnny.
Johnny
Bart.
You know what? Johnny Bart, what a great podcast with you and him. But I noticed, like, your thumbnails, it says, like, you know, Hell's Angel, Enforcer. So you got to do something for me, like Irish Mob, Hitman, you know, from Boston. Even though I'm from Lowell, we're going to say Irish, you know, just something to get them to click on. Then we'll just talk about, you know, whatever I did for the last fucking 100 years.
Yeah. Hey, we'll come up with something good. I'm the king of salacious.
Yeah. Yes.
Can you tell us where we're sitting right now, you know, and why we're here?
We're in Chris Salerno's restaurant, Volare, in Revere on Broadway. It's best food around here. The fucking filet mignon with the blueberry sauce is out of this world. But yeah, Chris is the best. He always takes care of us, and Johnny, and you know, he's a neighborhood guy from East Boston who you know, everybody loves. I mean, there might be a couple people out there who don't like him, but I haven't met him yet.
Yeah, and this is my second time here. Hospitality is amazing. I told him this is the only restaurant I got to go to in Boston now. Yeah. Unless you and the Enforcer drag me somewhere.
Yeah, I'm going to have to take you out of the North End, you know?
Yeah. So did you grow up here in Massachusetts?
Yeah, I grew up in Lowell, Massachusetts, which is north of Boston, about a half an hour outside of Boston. It's an industrial city, a mill city, actually.
What was that like? Did you have family, siblings, mom and dad?
You know, it's funny. I don't talk about my sibling too often, but I do have a sister who we haven't spoken in a long time. She actually wrote a book about me and had it published, and it paints me in a bad light. But my father was a bartender and a bookie. He worked for a Massachusetts electric company, and he used to take action, and take action meaning he would take bets down at the bar at night. And he was a bartender, and my parents divorced when I was young, and I bounced around, and I'd always try to go to my father's, but he was a single, you know, he'd always have girls over, one-bedroom apartment. So my mother actually, I started getting in trouble at a young age. I always looked up to my father, who, and you know, some unsavory characters down the bar, you know, this one just got out of prison, this one, I looked up to these guys, you know, and after my parents got divorced, my mother, in her defense, I don't want to sit here and you know, make this about my mother like she was terrible. She was a good mother, but she couldn't put up with me. And at a young age, she signed me over to the state when I was 14 years old because I kept getting arrested. I started getting arrested at a young age, and after that, I'd be, you know, in and out of, you know, foster homes and Department of Youth Services, which is DYS, and I'd escape and always go back to my father's. My father was always there, be like, the cops are already here looking for you, you know, so.
Did you look up to your dad?
Yeah, definitely.
Do you think you kind of like, you know, that might have led you into trouble by looking up to him, and he was involved with the gambling and whatnot?
I don't blame him and or anything like that. I don't know if that, you know, he was the reason why I was like I was, but when he was a kid, you know, his father used to beat him up and punch him in the face when he was young. When he was getting in trouble, he used to give him beatings, and for that reason, my father never laid a hand on me. And, you know, I was like most kids, you know, I feared my father, you know, especially when I was little. When I started getting in trouble, I was like, you know, when I first got arrested and I had to call him, you know, I thought, you know, he was going to kick my ass, and then he picked me up and take me out to eat and didn't say a word. And you know, when I look back at that, I'm like, maybe, you know, one backhand, and we're not sitting here today, Ian, you know. But yeah, I don't know what it was, why I was, you know, enamored with that lifestyle, with the criminals and the bookies and the, you know, the drug dealers. But you know, it is who it is. Some people look up to athletes. Some people look up to, you know, gangsters or whatever. And you know, I just fell into that category where, you know, that was a life I wanted to lead, the easy money. And you know, I looked at guys that worked every day like suckers, getting up every day and punching a clock, and you know, it wasn't for me.
Hey everyone, it's Ian, and I wanted to take a second to say thank you for supporting this podcast. Remember leaving likes and comments on YouTube and reviews on Spotify and Apple, and even sharing your favorite episodes on social media and to friends and family help tremendously and are a huge way to support this show. Also, if you're interested in coming on the podcast to share your story, you could fill out the online form at ianbick.com, and I will respond to you personally. Now, before we get further into this episode, I wanted to shout out MyBookie for sponsoring today's show. MyBookie is an online sports book with live betting. Get started today by going to mybookie.website/lockedin and using promo code LOCKEDIN to double your bankroll with a 100% deposit bonus right from the jump. That's more money, more power to make winning plays. I hope you guys enjoy today's episode. Now, you're known for being, hilarious. We see all your clips, you're BeanShooter, but were you like that as a kid? How would you describe yourself back then?
I think I was always, say class clown, just, I always had a smile on my face, always laughing and joking. I don't know if I was always like this. I think it's gotten, it's progressed over the years. My father was always a funny guy, very, very quick-witted, and like I said, just being in and out of the bars when I was a young kid, I don't know, it's just who I am. I was telling someone a story the other day. I was in prison, and there was this guy, Gary Green. I have to look him up, actually. Giz Green, he was from Chelsea, which is right outside of Boston, And one day we're in Walpole, which is a maximum security prison. He says, "Yo, Mike Lee." I said, "What's up, Giz?" He's like, "You know where you are?" I'm like, "Yeah, I got a pretty good idea, And he's like, "Because every day I see you, you got a big smile and you're laughing, And I said, "Would you rather see me crying every day, And he's like, "Hell no." And I'm like, "All right then, So I think I always had a good disposition, no matter, like my friend Johnny, who's very resilient. Everything he went through, and you see the guy, and he's just, he's just always very positive and in good spirits. And, there were times when I wasn't super positive, but I like to think no matter what I went through, I always, had a good outlook. And I don't know if it's a defense mechanism or what, but I was always, laughing and joking about it. No matter how dire the circumstances, I always found a way to laugh about it,
Did people pick on you at all in high school?
Oh, I didn't go to high school, but no.
Tell us about why you didn't go to high school. You never made it that far.
Well, I made it to freshman year, and I lasted I was already getting locked up as a kid in DYS, and 8th grade, I almost dropped out of 8th grade, and then my father was like, you got to go to high school. So I actually went to summer school after 8th grade, and I went to a vocational school, and I was selling drugs then at a young age, and after 2-3 weeks, I sold some girl some mescaline, and she had a seizure. She had a bad reaction to it, and that, ironically enough, that weekend, it was Easter Sunday weekend. I was with a couple of friends of mine, and we were taking mescaline and tripping out. I was 13 or 14, and like I said, how Lowell it was an industrial city, so a lot of the mills, they call it, the boot mills. They used to make the cotton and everything, and we broke in this abandoned mill. And it was Saturday night going into Easter Sunday morning, and I had sold the girl the drugs that Friday, and I heard she had a bad reaction, and so I'm not thinking about it. And that Saturday night, we broke in this building, and me and 2 other kids, we had there was all kinds of stuff in there. We had these chains, and there's these big giant windows in these mill buildings, and we must have broke 150 windows. There's 3 floors. And I found this one thing, there was these abandoned tires, and we were taking them and throwing them out the window, and where I was throwing them out, there was a bridge where you could drive under, and there happened to be a police car. It was 5 in the morning on Easter Sunday. There was nobody on the streets, and a police car was driving underneath it, and it hit the car, and within minutes, there was every police car and the police force surrounding this building, and we're like, oh man, and they're hopping the fence, climbing in, and I tried hiding in this boiler room, and I actually they gave me a little bit of a beating. They smashed my head off a fence, and back then, a lot of kids had the shoulder length hair, me with the red hair down on my shoulders. You're never going to see a picture of that.
Wait, you had that?
Yeah. So the cop dragged me over, and there was a chain link fence that was chained together, and he smashed my face up the thing, and the cop, on the other hand, grabbed me, and he literally pulled me through. He had this space about this big. So I get arrested Easter Sunday. I get out, and the next day I go to school, and I'm sitting in, it was a typewriter class, and I'm in the class. It was the first class in the morning, and I look up, and there's the police in the door, and I look behind me, and they're at that door too. And I had a sneaking suspicion they were there for me, and of course they come over to me stand up, and I didn't know what was going on. Maybe I didn't know. I heard the girl, had a bad reaction, but I didn't think it was, that much. And they're picking up my typewriter and shaking it out and patting me down. It's like a big deal in school. And I'm like, okay, you know, I see where this is going. And they took me to the office, and there was 2 police officers there, and they were arresting me. They're like, you know, we know you sold this girl drugs, and I'm not saying nothing. And I remember the cop said, have you ever been arrested before? And, you know, I was only 14, and I was like, yeah. And I said, yeah. And he's like, for what? And I said, you know, breaking and entering, willful malicious destruction, you know, a bunch of stuff. He goes, when was that? And I was like, yesterday. And that was, I was expelled from that school right there. You know, they cuffed me and arrested me and took me out. And then I went to Lowell High School, and they already knew what I was about. So I was there like a week and a half, and I was skipping class, and they like caught me downtown with some kids, and they took me back to high school, and they said, what class are you in? And I'm like, I don't know. I don't even know my skill. I just wasn't even going. So they just took me, cleaned out my locker, and took me to the office. He's like, you know the drill. You know, you just got expelled from the Vogue. So that was it. That was the end of my high school. But no one picked on me in my short tenure.
And did you ever get your diploma later on?
I got my GED in prison.
Wow.
In Walpole State Prison, yeah.
So why drugs? Why did you start selling drugs? Why were you into that? And did you use yourself at that time or not yet?
Yeah, wasn't until years later till I got into the hard stuff. But when I was a kid, we used to, I'm really dating myself now. You know, 78, 79, 1980, we used to shine shoes in the bars. You know, when you go in bar rooms back then, everybody had shoes on. You know, now it's sneakers and sports. It was just a totally different thing. And we used to go in the bars, and, you know, the kids in the neighborhood, we'd shine shoes. And I was always trying to make a buck. And then I got into selling, you know, fireworks when I was really young, getting bricks of firecrackers, selling them 25 cents a pack, and bottle rockets, you know, grosses of bottle rockets, and the Black Cat, and you know, all that stuff, Thunder Bomb. And I was just always trying to make a buck. And then, you know, I honestly remember when I was probably 12 years old, there was a big arcade. It was called the World of Games in Lowell. It's in a bad neighborhood, you know, where I live. It's right, there's a shelter there across the street now and stuff. And I remember the first time I was with my friend, Timmy King, who's no longer with us, and I grabbed a half ounce of weed, and it was like, I forget, it was like $35 or something. And I remember I rolled up like whatever it was exactly, you know, let's say 35 joints, 40 joints, selling them $2 a piece, 3 for $5, 6 for $10. And when I was done, like I spent $35, I had like 85. So I'm like, oh, I'm gonna go get an ounce now. And I had like another $15 to spare, and there's a place in Lowell where I've since boycotted or some personal issues, but it's a hot dog place. I'm not going to give them Elliot's Hot Dogs, you know. So it was a place in my neighborhood. I used to go and get the hot dogs and chocolate milks, and I remember going in there, and I had $70. I doubled my money, and I had $15, and I got a couple hot dogs and some French fries, and I was just like, this is the greatest thing ever. You know what I mean? I'm smoked a few joints. I got, you know, I doubled my money, and I'm in a restaurant eating, you know, free food as I saw it. And it had always been a thing with me where I'm always trying to make a dollar, you know. Even years later in the throes of addiction, I was getting, you know, heroin in bulk from Dominicans and selling it to other people that were using. So even at my lowest, I was always flipping something, you know.
You were a hustler, an entrepreneur.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Entrepreneur, I like that.
Yeah. Do you think you got that from your dad at all?
Yeah, probably. I mean, he was always a bookie. When I was 11, the state police raided the house and really knocked on the door, his apartment, with a sledgehammer and took him out in cuffs. And it was all over the news and in the papers. And I was young then, probably 6th, 7th grade. I was already in a little trouble. And I remember it was like, you know, everyone, oh, that's his father, you know, whispering the thing. And I was like, I was so proud of him, you know what I mean? Like, that's my guy, you know, and just, yeah, his friends and all that. So I'm sure I got that from him. He was always, but my father was different in the sense that he always had a job, and then he'd bartend after work, you know what I mean? And he'd have a side hustle. Me, I never had a job.
You've never worked a regular job back then at all?
Yeah, never.
Well, even now, I don't think.
No.
Really? Yeah.
When I was in prison, I made license plates.
That's like the cliche.
Yeah.
Prison movie type thing.
Yeah, I made license plates for a while, and when I got out of there was like there there's like a machine, they come through and you put them on this thing and then they go through the machine, it would paint the numbers. And then you take them off and put them onto these racks that go through an oven and it dries them and they come out the other side. And I worked in there for a while and when I got out, I had a check because you'd make, back then I think it was $35 a week and they'd put 17 in your savings and 17 every week in your canteen account, your commissary, whatever you want to call it. So when I got out, I had a nice check, and I remember thinking, wow, this is like, the IRS doesn't know I exist until right now. So I walked in the bank, it was in the town center in Walpole. I went in the bank and they asked for an ID and I had my prison ID this picture right here, so I gave them that and I was talking to some girl on the phone and she came and picked me up and she was kind of dressed, she had a low cut shirt and I remember the girls in there like whispering to the other girls and they're turning around looking at me and one of them's like, they knew I just got out, from doing a little bit of a stretch, but that was my first, real job.
Was that your first real prison experience? Like I know you had been arrested and in jails, but was that time your first one or was there one before that?
There was a few before that. That was my first time in state prison. I'd been in county jail a bunch of times and DYS, but that was my first time in a maximum security state prison.
How'd you end up there and at what age?
25, 24, 25, yeah. That case, I got arrested trafficking over 100 pounds of marijuana.
Bean was moving the weight.
Yeah, I was moving the weight.
Cow.
I was moving the weight. So I was UPSing it from Mexico, San Diego, right over the border, and UPSing it back to Massachusetts. And I was selling 100, 200 pounds a week. And somebody actually got caught signing for a package. His name was Ray Lowe, fucking rat that he is. Got caught with a package and they ended up arresting me. And I remember when I got caught, it was a big deal. They were following me in a helicopter, and it was like when they took me down, it was a real big thing. And I remember the cop, my child's mother. I have a son. And my son was over my aunt's house, and my child's mother called me up and said, "Oh, Ryan's sick. Can you bring some children's Tylenol?" And once I got arrested, I realized what happened. They were in the fucking kitchen. They raided her house, so she called me. And there was probably fucking 15 cops standing in the kitchen when she called me and said, "Hey, can you go by your aunt's? Ryan's there. He needs some children's Tylenol." So I walked in, and a couple days before I left my house, and I had a couple friends of mine with me. The aforementioned Timmy King, he was with me that day, and another kid, Sean Nutter, who's no longer with us either. He was a good friend. So I'm driving, and I see this helicopter up in the sky, and it's not like in the movies like Goodfellas where it's like 20 feet over your car, like whoop, 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 whoop. You basically don't see it. It's up high. So I'm with them, and I'm joking around, and I say, "See that helicopter? It's following me." Because I felt like I was getting followed for a couple of days. So we're just driving around. I had T-tops. I had this white IROC, and we're driving, and we're looking, and it's, we're driving around for like 20 minutes, and this thing's still up in the sky. So I drove along this river in Lowell, like 3 miles, and it was like to the right, like right above me, and I'm like, wait a minute, man. So I take a left. There's a street in Lowell, Bridge Street. Lowell's close to New Hampshire. It actually, maybe a mile up the road, you're in Pelham, New Hampshire. So there's this one road, Bridge Street, Route 38. So I take a sharp left, and the helicopter's there all the way up Bridge Street. Now they're in the car. They're like, dude, I really think this helicopter's following us. So there was some apartment building, so I pulled behind the apartment building, so it was like obstructing the view, like we couldn't see the helicopter anymore. And we just all got out of the car, and we just waited, and we're looking up at the sky, and then there it is right above us. So I'm like, oh, man, this is not good right now, So I went to a bar down the street where my friend was, and he was actually my co-defendant, Greg Smith. And they were in the bar watching him at this time. So I don't know any of this. They're ready to wrap us all up, And I went in, I said, "Hey, man, I think there's a helicopter following me." Now he's like, same thing. "Are you fucking doing coke? Like, are you, they're thinking I'm just paranoid and I'm geeked out. And I'm like, "No, I'm telling you, man," right? So now I go to walk outside, and there's like this pickup truck at the end of the parking lot with 2 guys in it. And I'm like, those guys are fucking following me too. And he's like, "Get the fuck out of here." So I give the guys the finger, and they're looking right at me, and there's no reaction from them. Like anybody else would be like, "What the fuck's your problem, buddy?" You know what I mean? Come over, like, "Hey, what you?" And they just sat there looking at me. I'm like, "I'm telling you, man." I go, "Here, take I had a Notre Dame jacket and hat. I go, "Take my car for a ride." So he come back 20 minutes later, and he's like, yeah, you're fucked. I don't know what you did, but, you know, you're obviously in a lot of trouble. And so getting back to my aunt's, I show up at my aunt's house, and she lives in Drake, Massachusetts, the suburbs. And, you know, she got the in-ground pool in the back. It's a quiet neighborhood. And I walk into, and she had a hairdressing studio built in her house downstairs. So I go in, and I give my son, you know, some Tylenol. He's in front of the TV, and then I just hear, like, all the car doors slamming. And I'm like, what the fuck is that? And I went to go up through the front door, and, you know, they just bundled me, slammed me down. There was a lot of them there. And my uncle, who was a union electrician for 40 years, he was doing dishes, and they were, like, dressed like ninjas. And he, you know, they went up behind him and put a gun to his head and said, is Mike Lee in the house, you know? So that poor guy, you know. He might have had a little mud in his shorts after that. And I remember when they dragged me out on the front lawn, I had picked up another friend of mine who's dead now, Rich Gothier, and I said, dude, they've been following me for a couple of days. Drive my car. And he was saying the same thing. He's like, Lee, are you skitzing? Are you skitzing? That's a term we use for being on coke and being paranoid. He's like, are you skitzing? I'm like, I'm telling you, man, they've been following me. They're in a fucking helicopter. And he thinks I lost my mind. And when they got me on the front steps, I look, and they had him on his knees, and he was crying, stuttering, like they scared the shit out of him, you know. And I remember they cuffed me, and there was two big stadies, and they ran with me, so I couldn't, like, my feet were dragging. They just fucking bundled me, and they ran with me. And I remember looking, and there was a guy there from, like, when my father worked, Mass Electric. He was, you know, back then they used to physically read the meter. They go in your house and write down, you know, with the energy. And the guy was reading the meter, and he was just, like, you know, caught in the middle of this whole scene. And then there was, like, a caravan of cars. They dragged me, threw me in one. Then it was like, boom, 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 boom. And it was like 8 cars just woof, gone. Like, it happened so fast, you know. And at the time, I just remember thinking, wow, she fucking set me up, you know, which she did. And when I got to court afterwards, the person I just mentioned who wore a wire on me, you know, I trusted him, and I considered him a friend. And I remember them saying, back then, you know, it was like pre-cell phones. Cell phones were just coming out, like the Nextel 2 ways. They weren't out a long time. This was 93, 94. And I remember them saying they had a pen-registered device on my phone which identifies incoming and outgoing calls. Like, even if you called me and it said Ian Bick, and you called up and said, hey, you want to go to the Celtics game? They went to you afterwards and gave you a piece of paper saying you were an aggrieved person, which basically meant you were caught over the wiretap and identified. Not that you said anything illegal, but they went to everybody who ever called me. So, you know, everyone was fucking scared to death to talk to me afterwards. They went to everybody who ever called me and identified them. But when they arraigned me, I had a lawyer, Steve Rappaport, who was great. And I remember him saying, they not only do they have, you know, phone calls and a wiretap, but they also have audio. And so I remember during the arraignment, I'm like, what the fuck they say? What did that mean? And he's like, somebody wore a wire on you. And I remember thinking, oh, man, fuck, they got me. You know, and I'm trying to, in my head, I'm just trying to figure out who it was, you know, at the time, which I eventually found out.
Yeah, once they got that wire, you can't beat them.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's interesting what you said about the slips. They got to tell people. Is that like that in today's age?
I don't know. Yeah. I don't know. This was a long time ago.
I had just heard about that from someone recently, too, talking about that.
Yeah, 30 years. It's been 30 years now since then. But, yeah, I remember them saying, yeah, an aggrieved person. So they went and let everybody know that they were, you know, talking to me. One of the best things on the wiretaps when they were reading it in court, one night I was going to Foxwoods, and I left my house, and I go to get on the highway, and I go, fuck, I didn't get any weed, you know, I want to get a bag of weed. So I go back to my house, I get some weed, and I'm going to get on the highway, and this guy says he's doing radar, and it's like 3:30 in the morning on this street. I'm like, there's no way this guy's doing. He's like, oh, you know, you're speeding. I'm like, fuck, you doing fucking? I'm literally telling him, like, you're doing radar at 3:30 in the morning, but I'm the only car on the road. So yeah, now I'm like, I've always been kind of I don't want to say fresh with cops, but I grew up like that. Like, I don't hate all cops, and I'm not painting them with a broad brush, but when they start asking me questions, I'm just like, I don't answer questions. You know, hey, where you coming from? Where you going? Am I under arrest? That's all I ever said. Am I under arrest? Am I free to go? So I was doing that. I'm like, am I under arrest? And he got me out of the car, and I'm saying, why am I out of the car? I'm like, am I under arrest? And he stuck his hand under the seat. And those old IROCs, the seat was so close to the ground, you couldn't even get your hand underneath. And he fished out this bag of weed. It looked like it was there from 1962, right? It was the sandwich bag. He looked like 100 years old, right? He goes, "You are now, asshole." And he cuffs me, and I got like, I mean, $3,500, I think it was, in my pocket. So he takes it out, and they keep it. So I'm calling my lawyer in the morning, and he's calling the police station. He's like, "Something funny's going on." I'm like, "They kept $3,500 for a fucking dime bag of weed? Like, this is crazy." So the next morning, I get home. And when I was reading the transcripts of the wiretaps, my friend Greg calls me, and he goes, "What's up?" And I was eating Xanax. I was all fucked up. He's like, "What's up?" I go, "Nothing, man. You know, bad night." He goes, "Hey, want to go to Foxwoods?" So I remember it says inaudible, because my kid's screaming in the background. I'm saying, "Shut up, Ryan, shut up, sit down," right? I'm yelling. And he says again, I'm like, "What?" He goes, "You want to go to Foxwoods?" And I said, "I went to Foxwoods last night. I lost $3,500. I never even got on the fucking highway." So he's like, he has no idea what I'm saying. He's like, "What?" I said, "I lost $3,500 going to Foxwoods last night. I never even got on the Lowell connector." And he's like, "All right, bye." And when I got all the transcripts, I bailed out after like 2 months because I had another case. I had to do 6 months, and they reinstated the bail, and I bailed out. And I'm in the courtroom with a friend of mine, Ralph McDonald, no longer with us either. Rest in peace for all my friends. A lot of my friends are gone, and he was with me that night going to Foxwoods, so they charged both of us. So we're sitting in the court, and I'm dealing with this case, and I look, and there's like 5 detectives who were part of arresting me on the weed case, and one of them like elbows the other one and looks over at me, and he says something, and they all break out laughing. So me, how I am, I get up, middle of the court, and walk over. I go, "What's so funny?" The cop says, "Hey, listen, no disrespect, Lee, but that was the funniest thing I ever heard over a wiretap." I go, "What's that?" He goes, "You lost $3,500. You never even got on the Lowell connector." I go, "All right, you got that." I turn around, sat back down. My co-defendant's like sitting away from me, like, "Dude, what are you doing? Going and fucking arguing with cops in the middle of the courtroom?" But
that's hilarious.
Yeah.
Let's take a quick pause to talk about sports. Let's face it, 2024 has been full of surprises, kind of like when you think you're getting out of prison early, but they tack on an extra 6 months. But unlike prison, MyBookie always has your back. No guessing games here, just pure action where you call the shots. If you're thinking about betting somewhere else, well, that's like trusting a jailhouse lawyer. MyBookie gives you the edge, so every bet feels like it's on solid ground. Know your football and love winning? MyBookie is built for you. Here's a little tip to keep your bets on track. Teams with powerhouse offensive lines are crushing the run game this season, and betting those unders is practically free money. Stack that with MyBookie's risk-free Thursdays, and you'll be winning faster than I could roll out of bed in Club Fed. Bet anything, anytime, anywhere with MyBookie, the sports book that puts you in control and makes sure you cash in on every moment. So if you're new to the game and not sure where to start, MyBookie has you covered. Step up, go to mybookie.website/lockedin and use promo code LOCKEDIN to double your bankroll with a 100% deposit bonus right from the jump. That's more money, more power to make winning plays. If you've been betting with MyBookie already, they've got something to share with you too. With MyBookie Plus, the new loyalty rewards program, you can now earn extra cash just for doing what you do. More plays, more wins, more cash in your account, no strings attached. Now let's get back into today's episode. How easy was it back then to make connections to bring product back from California?
I mean, my friend Greg, I've been talking about, his father lived in San Diego. So he was always back and forth. So that's how I met, the Mexicans I was dealing with down there.
And do they just front you, or do you have to pay up front?
Yeah, they cuff it most of the time. Then I started, putting up a lot of the money and back and forth. But they'd send you whatever. Was
this common to do back then? Like, did you have friends doing it locally?
Yeah, well, me and him, we were doing most of it. My other friend, Spiro, those Greeks, Spiro took over the whole game, No, but yeah, there was a few of us doing it, and back then, like in October and November, the real good weed would come out. But this stuff you see now, it's ridiculous. This was like Mexican brickweed, but we get it $300 a pound and sell it for $1,000 a pound, and I was selling 100 a week, or more at the time, and it was just there was so much money in it. And the crazy thing was I was selling coke for years, and making a lot of money. And then I get into the weed, and that's when I get all the heat on me. I'm like, if I would have just kept selling coke, I think I would have been all right. But
wait, why is that? Why do you think?
Maybe, you know, going to UPS, shipping packages, going to Western Union. Back then, you could send up to 10,000 Western Union. So we'd send, you know, 9,900 and stuff like that. And you could just go in and, you know, what's your name? You know, Ian Bick. And the other person could have a fake name picking up the money, and you'd use a code word. Like you'd say, I'd call you, you're in, you know, Mexico or San Diego. Hey, go there, you know, there's a $9,900 coming from, you know, Joe Blow, password dartboard, you know, password pitbull. We used to use all these things. So they go in, they just give you the money. And today I was just talking about this. I was in the bank. For some reason, it's funny we're talking about this. One night I was with my friend, and I remember I had the San Diego Chargers hat on, and I go in this Western Union, and they got the plexiglass up and everything, and I sent $9,900 to somebody in Tijuana, and you know, Spanish name. It was Diego Alvarez. I remember the weirdest stuff, but I'm sending money to this guy, and I give the lady the money, and it's usually pretty quick. It's a couple minutes. And then I feel like she's stalling. And I said to my cousin, I said, something's bad, man. Something bad's happening right now. He's like, you know, you're paranoid. I had that, you know, sixth sense. I go, something ain't right, man. And these two guys come in. They look like, you know, construction workers, right? And they come in, and the lady's working. I don't know if she knew them or not, but she goes over to them. I go, watch this. She's talking to those guys. So she goes over and says something to the guys, and they go like this. And they look at me, I go, uh-oh, you know, obviously I'm fucking right here. Right? I go, hey, excuse me, I want my money back. And she said, I'm sorry, I don't know if it was 2 or 3. We detected, you know, 3 counterfeit fucking, you know, $50 bills, $20 bills in your money. And I'm like, fuck. She goes, we just notified the Secret Service. That was it. She didn't have to finish the sentence. I was in the fucking parking lot driving away before I heard the end of that. And looking back, I'm like, why didn't I just stay there? You know, yeah, take the, you know, $60 or $150. It was 320s or 350s, whatever. And but I just panicked because I was in that life, and I didn't want them fucking looking into me like, oh, why are you sending this money, and trying to ask me questions. But I should have just stayed there. Yeah. Lawyered up and got my money. Yeah, keep the fucking $60. But I panicked, and I bounced, and I dipped, as Johnny would say, and I dipped out of there and lost that money. But I think that's what it was, just flying back and forth to San Diego. They'd call me up and say, be here tomorrow. And I'd leave at 10 at night, and flying under fake names and getting UPS packages. And, you know, all it takes is one thing, like you going in the UPS store and someone calling, hey, this is suspicious, this package, you know. And it just brought a lot of heat on me. And, you know, after about 1.5 years, 2 years, I was wrapped up on that one.
Yeah, can you talk about the flight thing? Back then, different time period. You're saying you're flying under fake names. You can't do that now.
Yeah, no. You need just like the Western Union. You could do anything, flying to fake names. And I remember one time I was going to. They called me up. They're in Tijuana, and they'd call me up and say, hey, come here tomorrow, and they'd pick me up. And so I went to Logan Airport, and they were already on me at that time. And I remember these 2 guys were sitting there, and the guy had like a Levi's jean jacket on and like a pink polo shirt, and another guy, and they're just reading the Herald, the Boston Herald. And I'm sitting there, and right before the flight, they come up to me, hey, come here. They take me in this hallway. And I forget exactly what it was, but he asked me like 3 or 4 questions, and I lied on every one, and he just debunked every one of my my answers. He's like, so why do you get a one-way ticket to a border town? I go, well, I plan on staying for a couple of months. He goes, why don't you have any luggage? Like, you know, he got me with a few quick ones, like boom, boom, boom. I'm like, he's like, all right, like, you just lied to me 3 times in a row. He's like, we're just letting you know, you're on the radar. We know what you're doing, you know. And I'm like, I remember it shook me up a little, like, fuck. You know, and it that was the case. You know, it was, when I was arrested, it was federal, state, local investigation. I had 13 co-defendants. I think it was 11 of them cooperated. I think it was 11 out of 13.
And they all flipped on you.
Yeah.
So you're like the kingpin of this little organization.
Well, then they wanted me to
flip on
tell
Tijuana.
the Mexicans.
Yeah.
And I remember they come down to the cell and, you know, try to ask me some questions. And I had a pager and he's holding it. And when they'd come to Boston, there was a hotel in Boston called Howard Johnson's 57. It was on Stewart Street by the Park Plaza. And whenever they'd get there, they'd go to the 57 and they would just text me the room number. And I remember the cops holding my beeper, my pager at the time. And he's like, "What's this, 337?" And I'm like, fuck, you know what I mean? They're in town to collect some money and they ain't gonna get it, you know? And I was just like, yeah, I want to see my lawyer. And that was it. I remember when I got out after a close friend of mine, Nicky Cosumbolis, he owns a bar in Lowell called Captain John's. His cousin was it was either state police or the DEA or something. And he went in there afterwards and didn't know I knew him. And he's like, yeah, we wrapped we busted that whole weed thing in Lowell. He goes, every one of them people fucking rolled. He goes, except one kid, you know, a kid, Mike Lee. And then Nicky's like, yeah, that's my buddy. You know what I mean?
Where do you think you got those values from about the never snitching? Was that from your dad?
Yeah, definitely. Definitely.
Interesting. Well, and why didn't you go to federal prison? Why didn't they charge you federally?
I think, I remember them fingerprint me. They had like a different card. It was like a red card. They printed me, state and everything. I think they wanted the case to be bigger. They wanted to go after those guys. They wanted me to roll. And I think another reason is I wasn't like when my friend Spiro got arrested, you know, he's worth a few $1 million. He owned a ton of properties. The feds go after the dough usually, you know. I think with me, I don't know, it wasn't that big. I mean, it was big enough, but, you know, they wanted me to roll on, you know, these Mexicans and stuff. So that I'm still friends with. I still talk to them, actually.
So what happens next? You get arrested. You're in there. Do you take a plea deal? You go to trial?
I took a plea.
And the plea was for 5 years?
3 years.
3 years,
Yeah.
okay. And in a maximum state prison?
Well, no, it was just in state prison, but I got in trouble in there, and I ended up, you know, in the hole. And
Well, you got to tell us that story, Bean. you can't just not share that story casually.
Oh my God, it was.
So you get to prison. You're 25 years old.
Yeah.
Okay.
I got to prison. I'm 25. I got to Concord State Prison, and I got in some trouble in there. I got in a fight and a few other things, some homebrew, and I'm in the hole there. And then they shipped me to another place. There was a lot of overcrowding then, and there was a riot there in the yard. And they sent me to they were modifying guys to Plymouth, Johnny Bart's old house. They were modifying guys to Plymouth, and I went to this place, and it was horrible. It was probably the worst place I'd ever been in. It was one of these new jails, you know, where they it's not like the old school jails like you'll see in the movies with the big yard playing softball and this and that. It was like this, like divide and conquer almost. Like you could be in the next block and I'd never see you. The place was just terrible. I mean, everything about it was terrible. And I forget if it was a fight. Something happened. I ended up in the hole. And then I got in another fight in the hole with some Cape Verdean kids. And I was just, I was with an old friend, Teddy Sutherland, a friend of Johnny Bart's actually. We're in the hole together. And I was just ripping out at that point. I was shit bombing cops, you know. You ever do that, Ian?
No, what shit bombing cops?
Just exactly what it sounds like.
You were one of the guys that took the shit and threw it at the cops?
Yes.
That's a no-no in federal prison, man. Only the wackos do that.
I think that's a no-no everywhere.
So why? All right, so give us, why would you do that? What's this, like, why?
Because I hated the administration there. And
so you're putting it in your hand, like you're taking a shit and taking it and chucking it?
I'd sometimes milk cartons, cups, when they'd open the traps, give me my food, I'd bomb them. And yeah, I was doing that a lot. And then
holy shit.
So that, because I wanted to get out of there, and they'd bundle me and put me in that restraint chair. And because Plymouth didn't want to let you go when you were there. You know, you were like state property and they were getting money. So I didn't want to be popping sprinklers and do all that and get soaked. So I ended up catching a case out of there. It was bad, but I remember towards the end, every time I do it, they'd put me on this stuff called management loaf. You ever hear of that?
Mm-mm.
You ever hear of that, Johnny? Huh? So this is how they ended up pretty much beating me. They didn't know it. They didn't know what they won. So they'd put you on this stuff management loaf for 72 hours, where at 5 in the morning they'd come slide this thing under the door, and then you get another one at 5 at night. And what it was, I'm not sure, it was like steak meat that they ground up. It was almost so fine, like sawdust. And they'd put some other nutrients in it, maybe a couple of green beans, I don't know. And they'd chuck it under your door. And they could only put you on that by law for 72 hours. I mean, it was unedible. It was unedible. I remember taking pieces of it and dropping it in the toilet. And it would be like dropping like a hard piece of sand in the toilet. It would just dissolve into nothing. So I'd fast for 72 hours. I'd eat a meal. I'd shit, and I'd throw it at the cops again. So this went on for a few cycles, maybe 9 days of management loaf. And now I'm starting to like see spots. You know, I'm guzzling water. It's like I'm fasting, you know, and I'm losing it. So after the third cycle of the management loaf, they give me my meal. And I think it was like, they used to give me like oatmeal, like blueberries in it, like this blueberry cake. It wasn't bad, actually. It was one of the decent meals. And I ate it. And sometimes they give you, it's either milk carton or the cup of juice, so you get both. And I got done eating my meal, and then I heard, you know, Lee, back of the cell on your knees, interlock your fingers. And I looked, the move team's there with the shield, and I'm fucked up, like almost hallucinating after not eating for fucking, 9 days or whatever it was. And I just ate this, and it's like I didn't have the energy to go with the move team. That they had me, and I got on my knees and I interlock my fingers behind my head, and they're like, clear. They open the door, boom, and I'm like flinching, waiting to get, because they come in, and it sucks when they come in. So like nothing happens, and I hear clear, boom, and the door shuts, and I go, no, I'm in the cell with nothing. I'm like, the fuck was that? And I look out, and there's like 6 of them in the whole riot gear. And I look, one of them's got like the milk carton in his hand, and the other one's got the styrofoam cup. And I'm like, all right, that's the status I'm on now. Now I literally have to throw it with my hand, at them, which I don't want to do. And then the captain came to me. He says, hey, man, you're being transferred to Old Colony State Prison in Bridgewater tomorrow. I was like, thank God. It wasn't easy getting out of Plymouth. But
you worked hard for it.
Yeah, I worked hard for it.
So those management loaves, that's all they feed you for those 72 hours.
Yeah.
And it's a little small loaf?
No, it's like a hockey puck.
That's pretty small.
They just call it management loaf. Yeah, it's not actually a loaf like a loaf of bread. It's.
I've never heard of this before.
Yeah, it's great. You should try it.
I'm good. All right, so you go now to the maximum.
No, I go to another prison, Old Colony.
Okay, what happens there?
I get to Old Colony, and I had a beef with someone on the street who was actually a friend of mine, and he ended up like this girl I was with at the time ended up leaving me and going with him, and we got in a fight. And a real close friend of mine, Mike Stanovich, he was my best friend. He's no longer with us either. Like 2 nights later, he's rolling around. He's got a sawed off, and he's looking for this kid, and this kid's got an identical twin brother. So he rolls up, and he just had bird shot in it. It wasn't like, so he rolled up on him, and he's like, hey, and he, boom, let it go, and he shot him. He dove behind the car, got him in the leg, and I get to this prison, and this kid's there, so I get in the chow hall, and I sit down in front of him, because we were friends. We just had a fight over a girl, and he's like, and he's a tough kid, real tough kid, and he's like, meet me in the yard by the handball wall in the back. I'm like, here we go. So I go to my cell, 3 pairs of boxes, 3 pairs of socks, 3 T-shirts, because, I know I'm going to fight him now, and I'm going to go to the hole. So we go out in the yard, and he's like, let's take a walk. And he's like, remember when my brother got shot? And I'm like, oh, here we go. You know what I mean? He's like, yeah, this kid, Freddie, died. He's like, Freddie was just here. He said it was, him and Mike Stanovich, and they did it for you, and this and that. I go, dude, that's bullshit, Like, what am I going to do? Say, yeah, it's like I'm ratting out my friend Mike. You know what I mean? Yeah, it was. I go, dude, that's bullshit. I got nothing to do with that, man. I don't know why he's saying that. And, and that's it. That's my story. So we walk around the yard. He's like, meet me down the library tomorrow. I get on the library tomorrow. He takes a napkin. He slides it across the table. I open it up. It's 3 Red Eagle bags of heroin. Street bags, which is big in there. They weren't jail bags, right? I was like, wow, my man. He's like, yeah, you got that, So he gives it to me. And since I'd been in, the girl who ratted me out, my son Ryan, I hadn't heard from them, So the next day, everyone goes out on rec. I stay in. I lock in. I sniff like a half a bag. Now I'm wrecked. All of a sudden, my door is shaking. The cops fucking opening my door and slamming it, right? And I'm fucking high as a pheasant, right? I stick my head out, and he's giving me the V, the visit sign, man. I don't get visits. Like, no one's coming to see me, you know what I mean? It wasn't like Johnny's family, you know. They weren't beating down the door to come see me, you know. So I go, visit? Who? Because my father would send me whatever I want. Just see you later. He ain't coming to visit me. And it's my ex with my son. I get out of the visiting room. She goes, how are you? And she's just looking at me. And she's like, Ryan, here, go over to the vending machine. Get some candy. And I think she goes, you fucking loser. She goes, look at you. You're fucking high right now. You're on heroin. I'm like, no, I'm not. She's like, shut the fuck up. Obviously you are. I'm like, all of a sudden my kid comes back. So we talked for a little. By the end of the visit, I'm trying to get her to send somebody $100 money order so I can get more dope. You know, she's like, yeah, this is, yeah.
You dog.
Yeah, she goes, this is the last time, you know, that I'm coming to see you with your son, you know. And I'm like, whatever, you know what I mean? So I started getting in trouble in there.
Did she snitch on you again that time?
No,
she
no,
didn't want to rat you out?
No, she left, and something happened. This cop locked me in for something, and I forget the cop's name. And we had words, and he said something to me, and he was sitting down at a desk, and they had to open my door to let my cellmate out, and the desk was right below the second tier where he was. And we're drinking homebrew, and they got these big, you know, the metal foot lockers? They got those
we didn't have
big
metal
foot lockers.
I don't think we had. We didn't have metal.
Oh, no. We had the old school metal ones, the metal drawer in it.
Mm.
And I picked one up, and he was right below at the desk, and I launched it right off the tier. And they said afterwards he shit his pants. You know, it hit the desk right where he was sitting. It almost hit him. I would have, you know, I was out of my mind drinking homebrew, and it hit the thing. And they come in and bundled me, and they dragged me all the way down the tiers to the HSU, and it was the hospital. It was like wintertime, and they put me in the cell near the door open, and they had me 4-point restrained on the bed, you know, naked. They threw water on me, and they opened the door, and the breeze was, I thought I was gonna die, freezing to death. It was like in Plymouth, they just put me in the restraint chair, so I was 4-point restrained for I don't know how many hours, you know, 8 hours or something. And there was a cop just sitting there, like looking at me, and he had this clipboard, and every like 10 minutes he'd write something on it. So after like a couple hours, now I'm talking to him like I'm talking to you, right? He loosens up a little. I go, hey, man, what the fuck do you keep writing over there, you know? So he comes over, and they got to write like what you're doing every 5 minutes or something. And he comes over, and he goes like this. He shows me the clipboard, and every like whatever 30 minutes or whatever it was, it just said, not happy. Not happy. Still not happy. Not happy. I remember I got a little chuckle out of that one. You know, I thought it was funny. And they put me in the hole for like 4 months there in Old Colony in Bridgewater. And every morning, if you wanted to go out in your wreck in the cage, you'd have to stand up when the cop come by doing count, and you'd be like, this cop would never talk to anybody. He'd just look at you, nod your head like, I want my hour wreck. And he's coming by, I don't know what's going on. He's coming by, he gets in my cell, and he's like, he points at me, and he goes like this, and I go, yeah. And he just shakes his head. He doesn't say a word. He points at me. He goes, I go, yeah, I want my wreck. He does it again. I go, what, I'm out of here? He goes, yeah. I go, where? He goes, MCIC to Junction, Walpole, bus is here. I was like, oh, shit, you know, here we go, you know, and that's when I got to the Walpole, the maximum security prison. And
what are you, like 27 at that point, or 26?
Yeah, 26. 26, yeah. And I remember I got there, and growing up, you know, you always heard about it, right? You always heard about Walpole, you know, like, you know, it was a notorious prison. They closed it. They closed it recently, and I liked it in the respect, like it's probably like Johnny went to Leavenworth, right? It's like a notorious place, and it's like a dungeon. There's so much history there when you get in. It's not like these new places that are all the same, you know, like this Plymouth and these places. They suck, you know, and it was like, this place was like, I remember I got there, they brought me in the door, and the guy was lowering some fucking bucket with a key on it, and the guy opens the door, and he pulls it back up. It was like, it was really, and right before the door opened, and you walk through a little courtyard, and you go in, there was a thing like a Hallmark poster on the door, and the two cops are standing there, and there's a guy with a gun up top, and someone put this Hallmark poster where it's like an eagle flying over a mountain with like a beautiful sunset, and it said, today is the first day of the rest of your life. right? And I remember thinking, wow, what wise ass, hung that up there. People going in there who just got life bids, every day, And I remember looking at that, and they walked me in. And Plymouth, the food sucked, and Old Colony, it was all right. And they take you in the HSU, the infirmary, whatever, and they check you out, and they put you in these cells in the back. I remember they gave me the styrofoam tray, and I open it up, and it's all beans and like 3 hot dogs and a big thing of coleslaw. And it was like this big wax paper bag filled with chocolate chip cookies and like 3 milks. And I'm like, holy shit. You know what I mean? They treat you all right. I said, hey, so far, so good. You know what I mean? It's the best meal I had in a while. And I'm sitting there, and they come out with like some bedrolls. They push it all in like a laundry cot, you know what I mean? And they had a mattress in there and a bunch of stuff. And I remember the cop come out, and he's like, Lee Otsuki, step out. And I remember hearing the name Otsuki, Teddy Otsuki. And I remember seeing him on America's Most Wanted. And it was a big, big case in Boston. And this guy was, he was a bank robber from like Texas or California. He was a Japanese guy. I mean, he looked like your typical fucking Japanese, like a sumo wrestler, but he was big. And I heard his name. I'm like, holy shit. So this guy he actually robbed, he was in federal prison because he robbed some small town bank in Texas. And he did something crazy. He when they were changing shifts at the police station, it was like one of these towns with like 6 cops. He went in there with like an M16 and rounded up the cops and locked them in a cell.
Holy cow.
So he took over the police station first, then he just walked in the bank. And he's like, yeah, you can hit the alarm. You know what I mean? We're going to be here for a little bit. And he cleaned out the vault. So he escaped from prison or something, and he was in the Fenway in Boston. He was casing out a bank. So he's in this apartment. He's got cameras all over the place. He's got like this crew of robbers and that he was going to do this bank with. And the Boston police showed up and rang his buzzer. And they found out afterwards they probably just hit all the buzzers. They were going to serve a warrant for somebody on like a domestic. So he panics, thinks they're there for him. He climbs down the fire escape. They got a cop at the end of the alley. Hey, he shoots him right between the eyes with a laser scope, kills him, disappears. So now they're like, what? They're there to serve a bullshit warrant. They don't know what happened. They fingerprint his apartment. They find out he's this international fugitive. And he was on America's Most Wanted. They ended up getting him years later in Guadalajara, Mexico, And that was the first guy I met in there, Teddy.
And he was just there casually in this Massachusetts prison?
Yeah.
I'm surprised the feds didn't take him.
I know.
Holy cow. What was he like?
They gave him a life bid. So me and Teddy, we ended up becoming, pretty good friends. We were in there, and he was crazy, obviously. He sounded like you when he talked. That was the craziest thing. You looked at him, you think he'd be like John Belushi on the Samurai, right? But he talks like, hey Mike, you got the Herald, Yeah. So it was kind of a weird when you talk to him. But one time, there's a few things with Teddy. I got some good stories. One time they're moving him to another block, and he had a beef with this black guy, Donnie Blakey, they call him Fatih, Chase Sosa. That's a whole nother story, him. He was another very dangerous guy, but him and Teddy had beef. So they're moving Teddy to another block, and he's like, Mike, come here, keep the peak. And he pulls out a shank. I swear it's this long. He got it wrapped up in saran wrap. He's like putting Vaseline on it, and he tucks it all the way, right? I was like, you know what I mean? They just did it right in front of me. I go, Teddy, what the fuck? He goes, never leave home without it, because they're gonna search him before he goes to the other block, right? I was like, that might be the craziest thing.
Doesn't that hurt you? Can't you get like?
I don't know, Ian.
Holy cow! Wait,
I'm glad you asked that, but yeah.
Should we sample it out? So wait, now.
I mean, I've had needles up there, so I've never had a fucking knife.
You're known now for like doing crazy things to get videos and stuff. What would you have done in prison? Like, did people send you off on missions or do any crazy
Ian,
things?
I would have been doing the podcast today, and now I would have been interviewing you if I had a fucking cell phone in there. Are you kidding me? Oh my god,
dude, you were probably an animal. What did they call you in there?
Just Mike.
Just
man.
Mike. Okay.
Yeah, just Mike.
Wow.
Lee. My last name.
What was your hustle? Did you have a hustle?
No, not really.
You
I wasn't
just
like,
around,
we took action. We ran a book, in there. But, I was just drinking homebrew. And I remember when I went for parole, they're like, I was in 10 block at the time. I was in the hole, and they took me for parole. And they're like, all your tickets is for homebrew and fighting and weapons. I go, yeah, when in Rome. You know what I mean? What am I supposed to do here? You know, that's what I do. And it was just working out. I had a lot of fun in there. I'm sure, like, Johnny could say the same thing. I mean, I don't know if you asked him, but when you settle in and, like, people say, oh, this prison's the worst, that's the worst. But some of those places are the best. You know, you make some good friends in there, and, when it's bad, it's bad, when shit pops off. But most of the time, it's not like county jail where these kids are, rolling up on each other from different hoods and different blocks and fighting each other every day and all this nonsense. Those places can be worse than those, in my eyes, can be worse than some of the worst prisons around, Those guys, the prisons like that, like Walpole, there was a lot of respect, and there was a certain code of conduct. Like, people after 10 at night weren't making noise and screaming and yelling out the cell. And I remember, like, one of my first nights in the block, somebody flushed the toilet like 3 times, and somebody was screaming out, "Who the fuck is that flushing the toilet? Identify yourself." And I was like, holy shit, you know what I mean? And no one said nothing. And I was like, I was going to take a piss. I was like, oh, flush that. I'll flush that in the morning, But, there was just like every day they had a quiet time when we'd lock in the afternoon and guys would take a nap. And just, like when I'd get a ticket and I'd lose privileges for 30 days, no canteen, no TV, 'cause you could have a TV in your cell. Guys back then, I know it's a lot different now, would come up to me, "Hey, Mike, we know you don't get a TV for a week. Monday night, Johnny's going to let you use his TV. Tuesday, Gio's going to let you use his. This, that." It was like, there was some real camaraderie, if you weren't a fucking piece of shit, obviously, where guys would look out for each other. And that's another thing that sucks about the prison system now, and a lot of things in general, even on the street, where guys don't look out for people like they did back then. At least I don't think so, I talked to Johnny about that. I say, even though you did all that time, you're blessed, you're very fortunate to have friends that stuck by you, to have family that look out for you.
You don't come across that.
No, you don't.
I think I'm friends with a handful of guys from before prison.
Like they tell you when you're a kid, if you can count your friends, what is it, what is it, 5 friends on each hand, whatever the hell it is. It's true. You get older, you realize, when the chips are down and you're away, if you got one friend that looked out for you and didn't touch you, you're fucking lucky.
Yeah, you can't have it loosely, use the term friends loosely in today's world,
Yeah.
You got to find the real ones, and like a Johnny,
Yeah, when the chips are down. And some people, right when you meet them, you're like, this guy's just the real deal. You know what I mean? It's, and some people, I tell people I'm a pretty good judge of character. I've been fooled a couple times in my life. One of the times was someone I met in prison who was great, but I never saw how he acted when he was on drugs. Mm-hmm. And sometimes I'll get fooled like that. If I'm with someone, and I've never seen how they are when, drugs are in the equation, but very rarely, knock on wood, do I get fooled. I'm a pretty good judge of character.
What if I'm fooling you?
Oh,
think
definitely
I'm like
come on. Holy cow.
You don't think I'm fooling you?
No.
You don't think I'm like, no? I don't got you beat?
I got you with the rock and the air conditioner window. That
was iconic.
Yeah,
man.
you're a genuine kid. I could tell. I could just tell you're a good person. I mean, you never know, right? Someone could be, be hiding something, but I don't think there's any, you're different than a lot of people we know. Everybody's unique, but you can just tell you're a genuine person.
Thanks, Bean. So you get out of prison, do you go back, or are you clean at that point from that state bed?
No, I went back.
You went back multiple times?
Yeah, multiple times.
So at what age do you finally clean it up and kind of get your life together?
At age 43, my friend Mickey Ward, who was a boxer, they made a movie on his life, The Fighter. I had been going through it. I lived with another guy, Boo Boo, was a close friend of mine, and he was wrapped up on drugs for years, and I'd always end up with him, and I was just in and out, and I didn't get strung out on heroin until mid-90s when I was out on bail for one case, and I just thought, it was just because I was facing this time, and this girl cheated on me, and it's like if you've ever, so I grew up around a lot of prostitution and a lot of heroin in my neighborhood since as long as I can remember. I remember people nodding out on heroin. Lowell used to be like Lowell, Lynn, Lawrence. There wasn't a lot of heroin around Boston, and they'd go to these towns, mostly because there was a lot of, no knock on the Dominicans and the Puerto Ricans, but that's who had the heroin mostly. And where I grew up, there was a lot of Spanish there, and I grew up in a neighborhood where there was, you know, pimps and prostitutes and heroin, and so I grew up around it, and I always thought, you know, I'd never get hooked like them. You know, once in a while I'll sniff a bag. When I was in 8th grade, I sniffed a bag of heroin for the first time. So it was always around, but I was always like, oh, I'm too smart to get hooked on it. You know, these idiots do it every day, and they get physically addicted, and they catch a habit. Now, I'll never do that. But once you know that high, and then something bad happens, you know, it's a recipe for disaster. Somebody close to you dies, you know, a girl cheats on you. You sniff a bag of heroin, you're on a fucking cloud. You know what I mean? And then when it wears off, you're right back where you were. And I think that was bad for me, whereas I'd always done that every once in a while, but I never let it, you know, once a month I'd sniff a bag sometimes, you know, because it was around. And then when bad things started happening, shit started falling apart, you know, I started using more often. And then when I first got hooked, when I went away for 3 years, in my mind, I'm like, you know, that was just an aberration. I was going through some stuff, and you know, that'll never happen again. But it's a tough addiction, opiates. And once you're hooked on it, I kept thinking that I'm just gonna drink. You know, I'm just gonna hang out with my friends and go to the Patriots game and have some beers, and I'm gonna do this, and it's just once you it's a slippery slope. Once you start sticking needles in your arm and injecting cocaine and heroin on a daily basis, you know, the weed don't do it for you anymore. The alcohol don't do it. Me, I'll speak for myself, didn't do it for me anymore. And I'd be all right for a few months just hanging out with my friends and drinking, and then one night I get drunk and I'm saying, how the fuck can I get away from Johnny and Gio here? Hey guys, my girl just called me, I gotta go. Because I already made that decision in my mind. I'm going to get some coke, and then I'm like, oh, I don't want to do heroin because I don't want to get hooked. I'll just do coke. And then I'm flying on coke, and I want to, you know, I want some landing gear, as they call it. I want to come down, and then I'm getting dope. And I did that for a while. I get locked up. You know, oh, it's not going to happen again. It's not going to happen again. And it seems so simple, right? But I finally realized, yeah, you can't drink, you know. Yeah. You can't really do anything anymore, which I don't, you know. Although the weed's so good now, I see it and I smell it, and I want to fucking smoke some of this fucking blueberry fucking Durban fucking Kush or whatever. Because I used to love weed, but I look at it now and I say, do I think weed would bring me back to heroin or mushrooms, psilocybin? No, I don't. I don't really think it's a big gateway drug, even though I started with it. But my thing is, I've been clean off everything for 11 years. Why risk it? Well, you know, what's the risk reward? To smoke a joint? You know? So maybe someday. But
so you had like 20 years of just in and out of jails, prisons, addiction.
Yeah, 30 years probably.
You ever look back and, you know, like regret missing out on that time, not having like a real life?
Not really. Not really, because I'm, you know, I'm sure, you know, other people can attest to it. The times I went through, I met a lot of cool people. I met a lot of interesting people, and it brought me to where I am now, you know, with you and friends like Johnny and Gio and these guys, and guys I would have never met in my life if I didn't go through that. We never would have crossed paths. Mm-hmm. You know, I'd probably be fucking working at Jiffy Lube, or, you know, that wasn't for me, punching a clock and, you know, just being normal. I wouldn't want to have, I like having a story. I don't want to be a guy that has no story, you know? Mm-hmm. Got up every day and, you know, married my high school sweetheart and got a job at the fucking, you know what I mean, the fucking Market Basket warehouse or something. And, I mean, hey, God bless those guys, people that are happily married and got kids and, you know, never did anything, you know. I don't know. That's for them.
Tell us about that moment you decided to get clean.
So I got out. What was it? So it's so good. I don't know if I ever really made a conscious decision to do that. I got out in 2009. Again, yeah, 2009. Yeah, 2009. No, 2008. I get out. I'm back again. 2009. I get out in 2011. And I remember thinking back then, 2011, how long, 15 years ago, I remember thinking, if I turned 40 years old and I'm still doing heroin and coke and calling detox for a bed and running around, and, you know, the crimes get worse and worse. You know, I'm running out of fucking Walmart with a toaster oven. You know what I mean? It's not like I'm fucking doing these fucking, you know, these big capers or anything. You know what I mean? There was a lot of boosting, a lot of, you know, just junkie crimes, as they call them. And I'm just like, if I turn 40 and I'm still, because I used to see people in the methadone clinic, And I used to say, they must just pull your teeth and give you a cane. Because, you know, they lose all their teeth. You see them in line, they're in a wheelchair. I go, if I'm 40 years old, I started making this promise to myself. And I'm still doing heroin and coke. I'm just giving up. I'm waving the white flag. I'm going down the methadone clinic, like, sign me up.
Yeah.
You know, because I never wanted to get on that. And there I was. You know, I'm finally at that stage of the game, 41, 42. And I'm like, I just got to get on the clinic. And, but I'm fighting with it. And a lot of times, you know, when I was dope sick, I needed money, I'd rob a bank, you know, because that's the easiest way to get money, you know. And so I'm doing that again, passing a few notes. I did a bunch of them. And, you know, over the years, I got away with a few of them. And I'm in my friend Boo Boo's house. And I did a good one, and I had a lot of money. And we're doing the coke and heroin, and then I'm getting towards the end, and the money's running low, and I'm hiding money everywhere when I'm geeked out, you know. So now it's like a treasure hunt. It's like this, you know, little thing I do, looking for money, and there's no more. And it was like in the wintertime when it gets dark real early. It was real cold, you know, and it was like pitch black out. It was like 7 at night, and Boo Boo's cooking in the kitchen because he could cook, you know. He's come from a real Italian family, and he could, you know, his sister would be making homemade sausages and chicken cutlet, and he could cook like a bastard, you know. So we used to, you know, get the food stamp cards, and we're boosters too. So we'd take these labels off, like a kielbasa was $1.29. He'd take that off and put it over like filet mignons and bags of shrimp, and no matter how bad we were, we always ate real good. And he's cooking in the kitchen, and I'm like out of money. I'm down to like nothing. And I go, I'm going to go smoke a cigarette outside. And we lived on a busy street, High Street in Lowell. And I went outside, and it's pitch black. And I remember the wind's whipping around. And there's a van across the street. And usually there's a lot of traffic going up and down the street. And there's no cars. And I had this eerie feeling. I'm like, man, something's weird, right? Something's weird going on. And I had this jacket I hadn't worn in a while. And I go to the pocket, and I feel something crinkling around. I'm like, oh, you know, because I'm always hiding money, like $100 bills. I remember I pulled it out. It was like from a yellow legal pad, and it said, "No die packs or you die," you know, 50s and 100s only. It was a note I just had there because I was always ready to do another one. So I'm like, I'm sitting there, and and you know what I used to do in my sick mind? I'd put "no die packs or you die," and I'd spell die both the same way, D-I-E. So that was going to be my big defense. Like, hey, I want a spelling bee, you know, in 8th grade. I would never spell die, you know, D-I-E, you know, die packs, right? Yeah. So I take the thing out, and I'm looking at it, and I ripped it up, and I threw it, and the wind's whipping around. It's blowing little yellow pieces everywhere. And I'm looking around. I just had this bad feeling, you know. And I walk back in the house, and I sit down. And there's like an alley next to the house on the side. And the way the living room was, the TV was right there, and there was 2 windows. And I just see like boom, 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 like a bunch of heads go by the window. I'm like, did I just see that? And then he screams, like boom, on the back door. And he's like, they're here. And I had some drugs on the table, a bag with some pills and some other shit in it. And I jump up, and I run to the front door. And then I realize, well, they're probably on the other side of it. I mean, I don't know, but I mean, just an educated guess. If they're coming through the back door, I'm gonna say they got the front covered. So now I spin around. I'm in a panic, and now they come through the door, and I can see them in the kitchen, and the living room's in the middle. Now I remember I got these drugs on the table. So they're going to come towards me, and I'm running at them full speed, and it throws them off. They're like, you know, stopping and drawing down on me, and I stop at the table. Like, you know, I tuck it. You know, I didn't get it all the way up there, but, you know, close enough. I got it, you know, I suitcase it. And
suitcase it so casually.
they come running in, and cop hits me. Joe Murray, he's still a detective in Lowell, who I get along with now, you know, nothing personal, whatever. He hits me, and he grabs me and foot sweeps me and goes to slam me down, and we land in Boo Boo's recliner, and it popped open, and I go, oh, that hurt, you know, like, he's like, shut the fuck up, and he stands me up, and there was a lady from the bank robbery task force, FBI was there then too, and she's like, he just stuck something in his ass. He just stuck something in his ass. I'm like, shut the fuck up, and the cop hits me again. Boom, hits me. So I'm like, I don't know what she's talking about. And this Lowell cop, and I always shout him out, I don't know why. This Lowell cop, Billy Finn, who actually pulls me out of there after. I'll tell you the story after. He comes walking in uniform, and they're all, they got the flak jackets on, but he's just the little cop. And the bank they were arresting me for was in Chelmsford, Mass, so they had to take me to that police station. So he comes walking in, and she's still saying I stuck something in my pants. I'm telling her to shut the fuck up. And that morning, I had a shoplifting case that I defaulted for. So I see him, and I go, hey, Billy, you really send the cavalry for a fucking shoplifting beef, huh? What the fuck's this all about? And he goes, Mike, we ain't here for no shoplifting. He says, you hit a home run this time, and it ain't Little League. So I'm just playing fucking dumb, right? I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about, but I know, it's over. And fucking, he comes over, and she goes, he stuck something down his pants. So in my defense, I'm wrestling around. I just got punched in the face. I just got fucking slammed. So the cop comes over, and he pulls my pants out. He looks down. He goes, you Irish, Mike? Right? Yeah, right? I said, I'll tell the jokes around here, Billy. This is my fucking house, right? And he said to them, you can take him now. You got a live one. So it was in defense mode. I'm getting attacked. I got, they're all around me with guns. They're hitting me. It's not like it's fucking swinging around. So we got a live one. I said, you got a live one here, boys. Holy cow. So now they take me to Chelmsford. And they take me to Chelmsford police station. So the cops now, they think they're dealing with, some idiot. I'll never forget the cops' names. One of them was Tyros. I think it was George Tyros, Greek name. The other one's name was Todd Ahern, Irish name. And the cops are saying, hey, Mike, we're friends with your father. He bartended at the Gaelic for years. We love that guy. Hey, listen, it's just a note, it's fucking unarmed robberies. Like, they'll probably give you a yimp, a ricka. We want you to talk. I say, hey, listen, stop talking. I said, get me a pack of cigarettes, Camel non-filters, and I'll talk to you. I'll sit down and hear what you guys got to say. So they're like, all right. So they're running around, and then they're coming back to the cell. Hey, they can't find Camel non-filters. I said, get me Marlboros. I'll break the filter off. So they come back. We got them. So they take me out in this fire escape, and it's freezing. It's January. They kick the door open. I'm cuffed. There's like 4 of them around. I chain smoke like 4 buds, just talking about some nonsense. Some serial killer got arrested in that town recently. Guy's name was Adam Leroy Lane, and he was a truck driver, and he was killing women. And he broke in this house, and he was dragging this 14-year-old girl out of the bedroom. And the cop goes, you know what happened? The parents, the mother and the father, fought this guy to the death, and the guy got arrested. And he said, you know what happened? It was a hot summer night, and the parents' air conditioner broke that day, and it wasn't working. And they heard, like, struggling going on in the kid's bedroom. It was like 3 in the morning. And this guy, his truck was down the street. He had, like, duct tape in it and ropes and crazy video. He was a serial killer, right? And I'm like, they're telling me the story. I'm like, I'll never forget it, I'm smoking the butts hanging on every word. I'm like, oh, really? So then they're done. I go, hey, can I make a phone call? And I was dating these 2 different girls at the time. And I said this, I was telling them this the other night. I called them like, hey, you're probably not going to see me for a while. I got jammed up. And while I'm talking, I look down. I got the other girl on the phone. I look down. There's, it's like from a computer. What do you call it? Like a floppy disk. It looks like a CD, a silver thing. And it says thief on it. So I realize it's evidence probably from a computer, like a camera or something, right? So the cop's got his back turned, so I got my thing, and I'm like taking it like this, because I'm just going to steal it and break it and throw it down the toilet. I'm just taking one for the team on the way out the door. I don't know who this is, but I'm destroying evidence on my way out the door, just because that's how my fucking mind thing. And the cop goes, hey, what are you doing? I'm on the phone. I'm like, oh. I put it back down. He's like, what the fuck were you just doing with that? I'm like, I don't know. He's like, the cop's like, what the fuck was that? Like, what the fuck? What were you just doing? I'm like, I don't know. He's like, yeah, you were taking it. I'm like, no. So I hang up the phone. He goes, the other cop's here. He goes, all right, you ready? I go, listen, guys, like I said, I got no problem talking to you, but I'd really like a lawyer present. The cop, he was fit to be tied. He fucking turned beet red. He's like, he just blurts out. He goes, a lawyer will just tell you not to talk to us. And I go, well, if that's his advice, I probably have to take it. I don't know what the lawyer's going to say. So at that point, they know I just fucking railroaded him for an hour and a half. They ran around, got cigarettes, let me make phone calls. So he takes me to the cell, and I know I still got the shit in my ass cheeks. So I'm, starting to feel a little shitty. So he slams the door. He goes, hey, if you change your mind about having a lawyer here and you want to talk to us, he's like, just wave at the camera. I go, yeah. Fuck out of here, clown. You know what I mean? So that was it. And I went, like I said, that was 2009. So I go back in, I'm in Concord, because in Massachusetts, they used to have a thing called 52A, where if you did state prison time already, they don't hold you in county anymore. So it's like a weird thing. They'll throw you in prison where guys are doing life and you're on a fucking $500 bail. It was a weird thing. They stopped doing it since then. But I get into Concord. I had a few other cases, and it dragged on for a little bit. And then right around St. Patrick's Day, they send me to court, and I get down, and my lawyer comes down. She's like, yeah, I just null prossed the bank robbery. And I remember when she came to visit me in Concord, she goes, oh, I got some evidence photos from the bank. So she pulls out one, and statute of limitations is gone, but I still feel weird talking about it. And I had certain clothes on robbing a bank. So I look, I go, I'm not charged with this bank. I go, that's fucking, that's Citizen Bank on Broadway. And she goes, whoa, 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 stop talking, stop talking. She's like picking it up, putting it in the folder. She's like, obviously you're a suspect in this one too. So they put the wrong surveillance photos from a bank I wasn't even charged with. So now I'm like, now there's stuff in the paper. I'm like, oh, they're going to charge me with a few of them. They know it's me, but I clammed up, and I go to court around St. Patrick's Day. The lawyer comes down the holding cell. She goes, I just got the case null prossed. I go, what do you mean? She's like, both banks, there was two of them, there's police reports. Both banks, both tellers said acne scarred. So she blew up pictures of me, and I had some freckles, She goes, the grand jury kicked it back. And the old saying, the grand jury will indict a ham sandwich? They kicked it back.
How they not?
Whoa. Fucking open the door and let me out the door.
Holy cow.
I'm thinking I'm going away. Holy cow, exactly.
And that would have been a Fed
That's
case.
what I said. That's what I said.
So did you take that as like your blessing and you got to stay on the straight and narrow?
Exactly. I got out. I ran up the hill to Boo Boo's house, and there was a Dominican leaving who just dropped something off, and he said, 2 for free for you, my friend. And I just told you we'll go back to Billy Finn, the cop. I went in. I threw it in the spoon. I did a shot. I woke up in the hospital. I got Narcan. I overdosed. And the same cop who come in and did the joke down the pants, they told me afterwards, he come in and I'm on the floor blue, and they're fucking doing the knuckle rub on my chest and fucking all this. And he goes, didn't I just drag him out of here for a bank robbery fucking 4 months ago? They're like, hey, he just showed up and asked to use the bathroom. We found him like this. So I immediately went and did drugs again, overdosed. And I went to see my father down the bar, and I walked in, and he goes, you don't even come see us, you go right to the fucking boo-boo's house and get high. And so that didn't work. I ended up, same thing, doing the same stuff, and ended up back in jail again from 2009, 2011. I did another 2 years. And like I said, I got out this time, and I gave up. I went down the methadone clinic, and I got on the methadone. But it didn't change me. I was still selling coke. I was still selling heroin. I kept doing heroin and Xanax. And I ended up, I was never an alcoholic. I don't know how that happened, but I started drinking every day. I started waking up in the morning and going to the package store and, grabbing like 4 nips and pouring them in my coffee and guzzling it down and going to the clinic and shooting heroin and coke. And now so I remember one morning I went to the package store near my house, and I don't know what it is, but on like Sunday mornings, maybe they don't open until noon. I forget what it is, but every morning I go there at 9 and get them and go to the methadone clinic. I remember I went and I tried the door, and it was fucking locked. And I was like shaking it like a madman. And then I'm like, look at you. How'd this happen? Now you're a full-fledged alcoholic. I'm in a straight panic because the fucking package store isn't open at fucking 9 in the morning, And so I was real bad then, and that's when I started reaching out to my friend Mickey. And I remember before, Mickey knew a guy in Florida who owned a big rehab down there, and he offered to get me in there before, and I started reaching out to him saying, hey, is that door still open, Can you get me in there? And that's when I started, first thinking about it, but I had caught a trafficking case, selling heroin, and I was out on bail for that, and I was so fucked up. And I had detoxed in jail so many times before, and it's, cold turkey. Unless it's alcohol, they might give you a couple of Libriums because you can die coming off the booze. But I'm just like, oh, I'm going back, and I got this monster habit, and I just wanted to go to detox just so I could, when I got locked up, that I wouldn't have to go through. I'm like, I'm going to have to detox one way or another. So I might as well, you know, do it at this fucking nice rehab in Florida, the Florida House Rehab on North Federal Highway in Deerfield Beach. Saved my life going to that place. Mickey Ward saved my life getting me in there. But that was my first plan, to go there just to detox, to go back to jail. But, you know, God had another plan for me, apparently.
Wow. You got really lucky. Like, throughout your whole entire life, your story, like, it could have been way worse every time.
Yeah, always. That's what people always say, oh, how's it going? I go, could be a lot worse, you know, that's for sure.
I guess that gives you a new outlook on life and a fresh, exciting outlook.
Yeah, I caught a lot of breaks. I did.
So how do you become BeanShooter? Where does that name come from, and how do you build this brand where if you go outside, people realize like you're BeanShooter?
You know, when I went to rehab in Florida, I had a good friend from Staten Island, Peter Sikoriak, called him P-Dub. He's a fucking total madman. He's a union electrician in New York City. I was at Local 1 or Local 3, I forget what it is. But so one day we're talking, there was an older Jewish guy. He was an old school junkie from like Brooklyn or something. And he says to me, you know, why are you talking to that guy? The guy's a fucking BeanShooter. I go, what? He's a fucking BeanShooter. Why the fuck are you fucking with that? I go, wait a minute. What the fuck is he? You don't know what a BeanShooter is in Boston? I go, apparently not. I go, you're making me feel like the kids in South Park where they don't know what a queef is when they go on the field trip with the Brooklyn kids. You know what I mean? I'm fucking laughing. He goes, he's just a fucking flapper, you know, just like a bullshitter. Someone's always telling stories, just an idiot, you know, basically like a bullshitter, as we say around here, right? And I go, no, I never heard that. So I started calling everyone a fucking BeanShooter. And there's a kid from South Boston, Evan Yanovich. He's an iron worker, great kid. And he said to me one day, he goes, hey, Mike, man, you got Snapchat? I'm like, I've been fucking, you know, shooting dope and fucking stealing and robbing for the last 10 years. Like, I didn't have Instagram. I didn't have Snapchat, you know. I had a Samsung Galaxy that I thought was fucking super cool, you know. I got this phone. He's like, Mike Lee, you need Snapchat, right? So Evan Yanovich, I cut one time, he's like, in some big union class, and people are like, you don't know BeanShooter? He's like, he wouldn't even be on social media. It wasn't me. They're like, fuck you. He FaceTimes me, and every time I see him, I laugh. I go, oh, how right you were. You know, I did need Snapchat. So I got the Snapchat, and I didn't get into the Instagram till later. I've only had that a few years now. And it's just, you know, it's what I see every day. You know, I got started fucking, you know, I'm driving down the street because that's all I do. It's not like I punch a clock. I'm constantly... You know, 1 minute I'm in New Hampshire the other day, Lobster Bisque, then I'm at his birthday party till fucking 3 in the morning, then I'm in Rhode Island at the Harvard-Brown game. You know?
And now you're with McLovin.
Yeah, now you're with McLovin. Yeah, Johnny's running me ragged over here.
He's pimping you out, man.
I don't know how long I can keep this up, but you know, just me putting shit on Snapchat, and people would send it around, and I remember when I first got noticed somewhere, I was up by like Laconia in New Hampshire, and I was in a 7-Eleven. A dude goes, BeanShooter. And I go, yeah, where do I know you from? He goes, you don't. But I know you. And I was like, wow. You know,
feels pretty good.
It was just my friends all following me on Snapchat. But, you know, just like anything, people send it around. People, your videos. Oh, look at this. They send it to someone else. They send it to someone else. The power of social media. And then I went on Instagram like 3 years ago, and after a year, they wiped out my page because the stuff I think is funny, you know, apparently...
They deleted your page before?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
That's the worst.
So you rebuilt it, but it's almost a 300K again.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. That sucks. And I just had a post removed 2 weeks ago that was totally harmless, and they shadow banned me for 10 days. I was watching the Jets game, and they showed Fireman Ed. You know who he is? He's a Jets fan who wears like a fire helmet, and I go... Look at this guy, Fireman Ed. Didn't he abandon the Jets? My father goes, yeah. Boom, struck it down, said inciting violence. I'm like, you appeal it. And they just said, oh, you lost the appeal. I'm like, saying someone's a bandwagoner? Like,
Maybe they're not supporters of the team.
I'm thinking, yeah, the Jets have something to do with it.
It's an inside job, Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah. Woody Johnson, he owns the Jets. Wow. But yeah, it just took on a life of its own, you know. And I've become BeanShooter. you know?
What do you want people to take away from hearing your story? Like, you could talk about the crazy stories and, you know, the life of crime and this and that, but what do you really want? Like, why do you share that? What do you want people to learn from it?
Well, like someone said to me once, I kind of, I wasn't a real big AA or NA guy. And, you know, an older guy said to me, and then I started going into the prisons and speaking sometime. He's like, Mike, even if, you know, you don't like AA that much or this and that, right? He goes, when someone sits down and hears your story, or even more importantly, someone knew you before, and they say, wow, this motherfucker, you know, did that. He got sober, he did all this. Now, if he could do it, because I was a fucking loser. You don't like to say that about yourself, right? You're a loser, but I mean, you know, when I got to rehab in Florida, I had abscesses on both my arms because I was shooting coke and heroin, and the veins were burnt out. They can never find a vein on me anymore. And I was shooting into my jugular and my neck. And I had a big track mark down here. And both my arms, I had an abscess right here. I was shooting into my hand. And I remember the girl snapped on the rubber gloves, and she goes, because I had even though I'm from Lowell, I'm not from Boston, I'm from right outside of Boston, I had a Celtics jacket on. She goes, wow, you Boston guys don't fuck around, huh? And I'm like, what do you mean? I remember she touched my neck. She goes, going right for the jugular, huh? And I was like, yeah, that's the money shot, you know? And yeah, I mean, people that knew me then, like people that know me now, I own a couple sober houses, and, you know, I try to help people get sober, and people that like get high and try to get over on a urine on me, they don't know me. It's like, you know, oh, you used to get high? Like, I'm looking at them like, buddy, I'm not wasting a urine cup on you. You just failed the eyeball test. Like, I'm a fucking junkie, you know what I mean? You're high right now. Like, game over, buddy. You're going to make me fucking urine you right now? Like, no, what do you got, a fucking Whizzinator taped to your leg? Like, let's not do this, you know? So guys, once I start talking, I'm usually like, all right, I got high. I'm like, yeah, I know. Obviously, I know you did, but I think that's the biggest thing out of everything. I joke around and make videos, but when I talk about this stuff, you know, I like people to know, like, no matter how bad it is, like, I got off that methadone. A lot of people now get on Suboxone and methadone and medicated assisted treatment. It saves lives, but I feel like they really push that on people now. Before, it was like the old school AA and NA, like, you know, shut up and just listen to us and follow our lead and your life will get better. And now I think they over-medicate in a lot, in a sense. And, you know, I had a friend, I used to tell him, get off those Suboxones, dude. And he got off them, and he died a couple months later. They found him in his kitchen, dead of an overdose. Matty Andre, a real good friend of mine, his brother Stevie, I know well, another friend. And, you know, that stays with me. I'm like, I encourage this kid to get off the medication, and he's dead. So I don't get up here on my soapbox and start saying, fucking get off the methadone, you know, get off the Suboxone, you can do it, you know. When someone comes in my house, though, and they got clean, and they're not on anything, I do kind of, you know, it's like you play favorites with your kids. I do kind of look out for them a little more because, you know, guys come to my house and, you know, I'm on methadone. Oh, you know, the doctor gave me Klonopins for anxiety. Hey, Mike, do you mind if I get my weed card and smoke weed? And I'm like, yeah, you're on everything but roller skates. I mean, go ahead, roll up a blunt, fucking, you know what I mean? I mean, let's go. I mean, what the fuck? You think I'm going to, that's where I'm going to draw the line in the sand? Yeah. The weed? I don't even give a fuck about weed, you know? And, I told people, like, if you drink, I'm going to throw you out. But I told guys a while ago, I really don't care about weed. I'm not going to break your balls for weed. And then one day a parole officer says to me, she goes, some guy called me and said, you know, I really want to get in Mike Lee's house because he lets you smoke weed. And I'm like, what fucking asshole would say that to a parole officer, you know? But she was actually cool. She knew me. I go, yeah, I don't throw people out for that. I don't, you know, it's not like you went into coke or heroin or, you know, and stuff like that. So, yeah, the MAT, they call it MAT, medicated assisted treatment. I feel like that's all there is now. And, you know, back in the day, you go to an AA meeting and someone will get up, I got 3 years sobriety, I got 4 years, you know. Now you can go there and there's a guy fucking nodding out up there telling me how to get clean. Like, you know, buddy, save it. You know what I mean? I mean, like I said, it's I don't want to speak out against it because it saves lives and it helps a lot of people. I think the big reason for it is the insurance companies were sick of paying for people to go to rehab. It costs so much money. And from your work, because they can't fire you now. I got a drug problem. You're in the union. They're sending you to rehab for 14 days, 30 days, and they're getting these, you know, exorbitant fucking bills, right? And now it's like you go there, you're there 10 minutes. Here, the methadone doctor's here. Here, the Suboxone doctor's here. And, you know, push you right out the door and put you on meds. So I think like everything, it's money driven. The whole medicated assisted treatment, like, you know, like everything, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
But for me, I'm very fortunate that Mickey helped me, and you know, the Florida house down there, those guys that I get off everything, and you know, hopefully I stay this way.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Mr. BeanShooter,
my man.
Yeah, this is a pleasure, man.
Thank you.
Shout
man.
out to Johnny Bart for making this happen. I'm rocking his merch right here.
Yeah, that's a badass
Everyone,
shirt.
make sure we'll have that
I
link
like the
in the
bomb
description.
One. I'm getting the bomb one.
Oh, you got the specialty.
slacking on it.
You're holding now on your boy
Yeah.
over here. But yeah, no, this is incredible. I'm glad we got to shoot it here at this location.
Yeah, thanks to Chris.
Yeah, Chris is the
Chris
man,
Moreno,
and
my
Johnny's
guy.
the man, and it's a pleasure getting to know you, and looking forward to doing more stuff together.
Fucking right. Thank you, Ian.
Thank you.